on Monday, March 23rd, 2026 from 7 p.m. on TBS Radio. Tune in for a special Creole Heartbeat edition with former ambassador to the United Nations, Crispin Gregoire.
2026 marks the 20th year since the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution commemorating March 25th, the day that the British Parliament abolished slavery in 1807. So the UN recognizes that date, particularly an initiative led by the CARICOM countries, along with the UN Slavery Memorial, the associated UN Slavery Memorial, which was erected on the grounds of the United Nations in 2015.
Monday, March 23rd, 7 p.m. on TBS Radio. TBS Radio Facebook page, YouTube channel, and channel 51 on Digicel TV. Hosted by Ambassador Prince Wadix, the United Nations International Day of Remembrance of Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade with Crispin Gregoire.
This is celebrated or recognized around the world by the United Nations, and it's in observance of the fight against racism and all forms of modern slavery.
On Monday, March 24th, 7 p.m. on TBS Radio, a call to examine our consciousness while analyzing and understanding the narrative of our ancestors.
And how they worked us so hard.
Caribbean. Welcome to another very important program in the history of Dominica. Welcome to Creole Heartbeat. And today we're going to be looking at a very, very, very special a topic this evening. By the way, we are live on DBS Radio Facebook page and YouTube channel, and also on channel 51. On channel 50 on Digicel. And also we are expecting to get the results of the city council. We heard of the elections earlier today, so sometime in between, Curtis Murphy should be hopping across to give us the results of the city council. But with us this evening, that is, we have a very special guest. Is the former ambassador of Dominica to the United Nations, a graduate of North Virginia Community College, Columbia University, and also Howard University, also a member of the movement of a New Dominica, co-founder of Lachelle Youth Group, also a leader of the Anti-Apartheid Committee at the Columbia University, and president of the Caribbean students at Columbia University, among several other accolades. It's a pleasure to welcome Ambassador to Dominica for several areas, and he'll bring us up to speed. Former UN ambassador, welcome my South City brother, Sakafet Fo. Bonsoir.
Mola.
What's up, my friend?
Good evening, Wadix. Good evening, Ambassador Wadix. Good evening to all the listeners of Creole Heartbeat and those of listeners of DBS Radio. Indeed an honor to be invited on your great program, Ambassador. I'd like to say that I'm already enjoying my time here. I was last year in November, December, and the winter was so bad I had to run away.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about the Caribbean. It can always be a nice haven for escape. Especially when the weather is not favorable in North America.
Well, Alex, I have to say, the weather in the U.S. forced me to run away, but there's only one place I wanted to go to, and it's Dominica. And now we can fly direct. Thank you.
And the direct flight got you safe and sound, and how does it feel to be back home?
Oh, it feels great. One of the things I always do when I come here is I have to go to Tico and Glow show to get to de-stress, because you come with a lot of stress when you come from New York. So I did that last night, and I'll tell you, I'm feeling pretty good, but I'm not 100%. I have to go back to
Okay. For
Tikwe.
a second dose of
Yeah, and
Tikwe Gloshu.
I'm told now in Soufriere there's a very nice place which I must go to. So
And that's what make the Nature Island unique. We have several of those therapeutic spots, which we can tell the world if you're feeling down and out. You can come down to Dominique and be rejuvenated. But Ambassador Crispin Gregoire, we heard of the death of a hero from South City. And for those who don't know, there was that special revolution which took place around 1974. And it really was a catalyst to a big movement in South City, Grand Bay. And one of the major architects of that movement, Philip Francis, aka UNICEF. What are some of your reflections of UNICEF as we look forward? He hasn't been buried yet, but we heard of the death, we heard of the passing of this particular brother.
yes.
But what instrumental was he as we reflect on the life of a hero from South City?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me express my heartfelt condolences to the family of Philip Francis, aka UNICEF, who led the uprising against the plantocracy in Grand Bay in 1974. And he's a person that I knew very well, and I consider him a brother. And there's no time I could come to Dominica and not go pay homage to the hero.
Yes.
And I would say, in very few words, that he actually is the hero, the national hero of Dominica for the last 50 years of the last century.
Wow.
So from 1950 to the year 2000, the man who left his, and I wrote something on Facebook, he left his footprints on the sand at Spring, where the colonials and the Kalinagos agreed to coexist. That is where UNICEF left his footprints. They're going to be there, and I hope that one day we'll make a monument to him, because he's a figure, a legend. Wadix, when this thing happened in 1974, I was like 18 years, not quite 18. I was going to be 18 in a few months. This happened in April. I would be 18 in October, and I witnessed a revolution. Many of us read and hear about revolutions, but to actually witness one. Frankly, I don't think that UNICEF and his bunch of revolutionaries believed that they could have changed the plantocracy. But to understand what happened in 1974 in Grand Bay, one has to go back to 1949, when the Lockhart family, that's the Massa, the planter who owned Geneva, the 1,400 acres of land of Geneva, which basically is Grand Bay. The Lockharts were there for 120 years. Wadix. They did a lot of cruelty to the enslaved Africans who were brought to Geneva, and understand that that's the first plantation in Dominica. That is where the plantocracy begins. And that is where UNICEF ended the plantocracy in 1974 and said, it's over. You're not coming back. Now, I have to say that his passing is touching many people. He made land available for the Grand Bay people. Of course, the Nassif family was quite aggrieved, and I think for many years they were. And I think I understand that if you lost your land, you will be aggrieved. But I will say to the Nassif family two things. One of them is that whoever succeeded the Lockharts, after all the cruelty the Lockharts did for 120 years, whichever owners would come to own Geneva would face the wrath of the Grand Bay people at some point, because the Grand Bay people would dispossess. They had nothing. If you know what Grand Bay was, today we say South City. South City was back then, before 1974, just that strip of land between two ravines. One has the Ambasso River that separates Lale from Grand Colibri, where there are two other estates, but Geneva being the largest estate. And that Geneva, actually, the boundary of the village of Granby before Geneva was that ravine that separates the village from where the primary school is, Wadix.
Yeah.
Government had to buy the land from Nassif to build the primary school. Well, in 1974, I believe that the Granby primary school had a enrollment of about 600 to 800 students. I don't know what the exact number was. All I know, there were a lot of kids in school.
Yeah.
And when the revolution started, it actually started with Carnival in 1974, which happened in the month of March. And for some reason, the police in Roseau decided that they were going to go to Granby to stop the Sensei bands. That's a no-no. I don't know who advised them to do that. You're just calling for trouble. And Wadix, I have never seen anything like that, where the police had to run for their lives.
Wow.
They literally had to, they came in 2 vehicles, I believe. They had to run. They were not facing guns, bottles and stones.
Wow.
And then that same carnival was when UNICEF, he came back to Dominica just days before for carnival. And it is said that, I don't know, he said that he went into Nassif's store in Roseau and took a bottle of wine and didn't pay and was arrested and spent the weekend in jail. He came out on Ash Wednesday. They had the case against him, charged him $100. He paid that and went to Granby and started a revolution.
So basically, there was that saying that he stole some merchandise at Nassif.
Right.
That's in Roseau.
A bottle of
He went
wine.
to court, a bottle of wine. He went to court. He paid the $100.
Right.
Then he went to Granby and a revolution started.
Right. Well, he went to Granby. And one of the first things he did is he saw a truck of Nassif and he commanded the driver to hand over the keys.
Wow.
Driver hand over the keys. So he drives onto the plantation and he sees the guards and he tells them, bring your guns.
Wow.
And the guards willingly bring their guns to him. So
But then it's interesting to know that most of the employees on that estate were people from Granby.
Yes,
It's
yes.
interesting to note that.
And also, too, a number of Granby people working at Belfast.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have that. And I don't know how many employees were there at the time, although at that time, Mr. Nassif was doing a retrenchment of workers, so they were actually reducing the size.
Workforce, yeah.
And what I don't know, and I'm still trying to study that, is how profitable the estate was then.
Yeah.
But what I do know, here's where the trouble starts, and that's why I mentioned going back to 1949. In December of 1949, the Lockharts, after being on Geneva for 120 years, they sold their estate to Mr. Nassif. And it was in the Chronicle, it was public, it was... Then Mr. Nassif, in 1950, starting in January, begins to start a program of evicting the tenants who are on the estate. And they are anywhere between 250 to 340 tenants. Some of these tenants, the majority are those who just farm on Geneva.
Yeah.
Others are those who farm and also have their dwelling on a section of the estate called Highland, which is where Mantutu's Park is today, right? And so they started to evict people. And in the British Parliament, it was discussed. If you go to the Hansards of 1950, you will see where a member of Parliament asking a question of the Foreign Office, why are 300 plus families being evicted from Geneva Estate, and what is the government doing about it?
Yeah.
Now, leading the charge for the tenants, the person who was the spokesperson for the tenants was no other but a Grand Bay personality, famous personality, E.C. Black. Black was the head of the Dominica Trade Union, and the Dominica Trade Union represented the tenants. And I should mention that the whole history of that is in the London archives at Kew Gardens. I spent a week in London 2 years ago just studying these files on Geneva. So Mr. Nassif now, he served notice on these people. And those people who didn't have anywhere to go, he sent in carpenters to break their house and put it by the side of the road.
Wow.
So you can well imagine the anger of the Granby people then. They were incensed by this. And when I was growing up as a little boy, maybe I was like 3-4 years old, my grandfather was telling me, these people who are living in our backyard, in my backyard, that's my grandfather's place. He told me they were evicted from Highland. And because they were relatives, he gave them a spot to put their house.
Yeah.
Interestingly, these same people returned to Highland after 74. So a lot of the people who were evicted from Highland returned to Highland after the revolution. So coupled with the Lockharts, who were brutal and who were there for 120 years, and now Mr. Nassif coming and as a new master and then taking the action of eviction, you can imagine how incensed the Granby people were.
Yeah.
And that being incensed, that anger was there for 25 years. The 25 years Mr. Nassif was the planter, owner. It was not a good time, and the Granby people, so what happens now, because of that foundation that I have laid out for you, the listeners, you can well understand better why 1974 happens.
Yeah.
And so it takes a life of its own, and it's a revolution that comes from below. There is no leader. UNICEF is the figure. He lit a spark. He lit a match, and it just ignited, and it's just an upsurge from below. So little boys that I was teaching at the Granby Primary School who were 9 years, 10 years, they're cutting coconut trees. And that was a symbol of running Massa out, that Massa had to fill the raft, and coconut trees were falling 24 hours a day.
Wow.
Cows were being slaughtered on the estate, and so on. So, and I'll tell you that the press, Granby was getting really, really bad coverage in the media. There were all kinds of headlines like, "Where's UNICEF? He's gone to the moon." There was a cartoon. Yeah. The police are looking for him. They can't find him. Yeah. Do you know that UNICEF was right there? The police, like 5 houses away, UNICEF is in a flower garden, chilling.
Yes.
And then his body, who passed away a couple years ago, Ashley Xavier. Mm-hmm. I actually did a video interview with Ashley, and he gives some good details. Mm-hmm. So then this thing goes on probably for about 2-3 months. Well, there was a state of emergency declared in soon after, because soon after the fire that burned Geneva Estate House, and the same night the fire that burned Mr. Nassif's store in Roseau, which you can still see. That's
where you have ruins presently.
Right, you have a whole block of ruins now with the new fire. Well, the assault on the Nassifs was in 2 places that same night.
So in the city and also
in Granby, right. And the interesting thing about the city one, which a lot of people don't know, is that there was involvement of Roseau Dreads. At that time, Wadix, Rosso had a lot of dreads before 1974. Between 70 and 74, that's the onslaught of the dread movement. Sort of a splinter of the Black Power movement, of which I was part of. And the Four Corners was sort of the center of the Rosso dreads, right? Until the police pushed them out into the mountains. And they started to move in the hills. They actually had this idea of they ban the iron, they're not riding car.
Yes. I remember. I was a little boy then.
You were a little boy then, right? So
they're not flying plane
they off the iron, they off the meat, they off the pork, off the whatever. And Granby was now their center of refuge.
Yeah.
So they came to Granby. They could mingle. No police presence there's weak. And then they smoke ganja and no police to worry about. Whereas if you're in Rosso, you got to worry about that. So Granby was like a haven. And bands of dreads from all over the country were coming to Granby and moving. So the Rosso dreads and the Granby dreads had an affinity, and I'm pretty sure from all what I have been told by informed sources, there were Rosso dreads involved in the burning of the store here in Rosso. Yeah. Well, when this happened, now you had the Premier Leblanc. It happened at a juncture just in the months of him about to retire. And this happens. And Patrick John has been selected as the new leader. So we are at that interim moment of the Premier Leblanc leaving, Premier Patrick John about to take on the mantle. And what do you do with Geneva? And the government decided that they would side with the Granby people. And I'll say, without the government endorsement of the Granby aspirations to have land, it would not have happened. Yeah. Because if it was
so we can safely say for historical data, Premier Leblanc sided with the ordinary people and agreed that the land would now belong to the people of Granby.
Right. Now here's a good evidence of just what you said. Premier Leblanc, well, Mr. Nassif did something which Premier Leblanc responded to. And that is he sent, after the state of emergency ended, and I don't know how many days, the state of emergency went on for about 3 months, But the intensive part was in the early months of March, April, May. Mr. Nassif sends a letter to the commander of the Dominica Defense Force, thanking them for protecting his property, and enclosing with it a check of $1,000. And
that's to the then Defense Force.
The then Defense Force.
Yes, because it's interesting to know and to tell our listeners who may not be aware, there was the police force and there was also the Defense Force. It was like a semi-army.
That's correct. And that Defense Force was disbanded in 1981, yes. I believe, when they tried a coup d'etat against Prime Minister Eugene Charles' government. So Mr. Leblanc directs the then permanent secretary for the respective ministry, I believe, maybe Home Affairs at the time. He was Allington Riviere, who became the first ambassador of Dominica to the UN. And he writes to Mr. Nassif acknowledging receipt of the letter. And in the letter, the premier is dictating that it would be unacceptable for either the police or the defense force to accept that token gift, right, if you want to put it that way. And that his best advice to Mr. Nassif is to sell land at a reasonable price to the Granby people. At that point, they had not yet decided they're going to buy the estate. Mr. Nassif thought he was coming back to Granby. But it was a foregone conclusion that that chapter had closed. Yeah. The stable, the horse had left the stable.
So the $1,000 was basically to bribe either the defense force or the police.
Seemingly, that's how
immediately Mr. Leblanc just...
Right, Mr. Leblanc cut that off. And I have a copy of the two letters.
You have a copy of the two letters?
Yes, I do. and I know other people, historians, who have had.
So eventually, what happened to that property? The state bought the property.
The state bought the property, and the person who could really speak to that is former Prime Minister Oliver Seraphin.
Oliver Seraphin.
He was the Minister of Agriculture at the time, and he oversaw the whole process of what to do with Geneva. And a number of things were tried. First of all, the first thing that happened was that a team of experts from the University of the West Indies came to help the government think through what are the options that were there for Geneva. Just 2 years before Wadix, Cassibrus had happened with Atherton Martin.
Yeah.
And everybody was scared now, was Geneva the next Cassibrus? And was that a leftist party? That was the Movement for New Dominica. Was that the Movement for New Dominica was the one behind this? That was. Now, I was the focal point for the Movement for New Dominica in Grand Bay. So when this happened, I was not involved. I can say, though, that I was sympathetic to the notion of land for the people, because we in the Movement for New Dominica always advocated for land reform and the breaking up of the estates. We always advocated for that. So when this happened, we saw an opportunity to push this thing in the background. I was very careful because I was suspect. As in fact, the police, I got some information that the police had planned to come to search my parents' house, looking for guns and that kind of thing. They did search a house next to where UNICEF lived, a lady who was the principal of one of the Tetmon school, Mrs. Iselin Del Sol, who is now deceased. So UNICEF lived next door to her, and they searched her house looking for weapons and for people, and UNICEF looking for UNICEF. The Gambia people had already decided that the Nassif chapter is over, and then it was just a matter of what will the government do, and the government did what I think was in the best interest of the Gambia people, and realize, interestingly, the objective of Isilo Black, because after to make sure the Gambia people got land, Isilo Black and Phyllis Shand Allfrey, working with her as his right-hand advisor, and the lady who would write all of these letters back and forth to the Foreign Office, they succeeded in getting the British Foreign Office to agree to buy 600 of the 1,400 acres to resettle the Granby people who had been evicted. And the British government announced that in the official gazette in 1950. Wow. And that's there, that's documented. Mm-hmm. But then, here's what happened. The next thing that happened is that the other planters went to the administrator and said to him, "Administrator, please tell the Foreign Office, don't do that, because what about us? We'll be next. Our estates will be next. Mm-hmm. So please, let Mr. Nassif work on something with the Granby people so that they can work on the estate and there'll be some harmony." And that happened. The Foreign Office abandoned their plan to resettle the Granby people on 600 acres. So what they did really, Wadix, is that they put in a bottle a problem that would burst later on, and it burst in 2025. Mm-hmm. Today, what you have is the total ownership of Geneva is in the hands of the Granby people. And so when I came back from university in 1984 to work as the head of Save the Children, the American Save the Children, we were now in that period of finalizing how the estate would be broken up, how much land would go for recreation, how much land would go for industrial development, how much land will go, where will the museum be, residential, where will the high school go. So we began to, and let me just backtrack a bit. When the thing happened, as I said, it's a revolution from below, no leader, no real group leading. After the thing happens, a group of us now come together, including the late Prime Minister Pierre Charles. We formed a group called Les Shell. And Les Shell ostensibly was to help to steer this difficult pathway on which we've now find ourselves post-uprising. And so you have kind of an upsurge of new groups in Granby. So Les Shell being the leading group, politically leading, with a lot of the elite of Granby youth who had gone to high school, because back then not everybody got that opportunity, right? But those of us from Granby who had gone to high school, like Noreen John, the late Noreen John, she sat down with me one evening and said, "Crispin, we have to do something for Granby post Geneva." And she and I kind of laid out a roadmap and then invited people like Pierre Charles into it, and then we start looking at, is the Cassibus experiment, is that possible here? If not, what do we do? It got complicated.
Well, I like that whole historical background, especially for those who may not have known UNICEF, and how important it is or was to the whole Granby revolution, and the history of Granby itself.
Yeah.
And I wanted us to really take some time and dissect that and actually give some perspective, especially we know he passed recently.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure when any date has been set for his burial.
So far, not yet.
None.
I believe.
But I believe whilst, we still continue to observe his heroics, I believe it is important for us to, at least those who are not from Granby and who may not be familiar with the history, to understand. But then our main purpose here is this special day in remembrance. Yeah. And you, as the former representative of the Commonwealth of Dominica at the United Nations, you were very pivotal in establishing and shaping the crucial international observance.
Yes.
Can you give us a historical background on the International Day of the Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Trade?
Yes. Well, it's one of the, it's one of those things that you end up, when one thinks of their life's story and the pathway on which their life takes, you have to think about what's possible and how you get people to buy into certain ideas. I went to the UN in 2002 as the ambassador permanent representative, which is the top ambassador for UN delegations. And in 2006, the retiring ambassador of Jamaica, he invited me to a lunch meeting. And he said, Crispin, there's the date coming up in 2007 that will be very important for the Caribbean countries and also for the African countries too, but more specifically for the Caribbean countries and countries like US, where you have large African population who were brought as enslaved people. Brazil, the same thing. And every single South American country, they brought enslaved Africans. We sometimes think it's just Brazil and
Caribbean,
every single one of them. You go to Peru, you go to Panama, you go Colombia. Colombia has a large Afro descendants, of African slaves.
But Brazil has the largest.
And so the CARICOM countries, the 14 CARICOM states in the UN, are a unique set of countries in that they are the set of countries that had slavery, and after slavery, black people assumed political power, right? In quote unquote, because they didn't really achieve fully, but whereas in some places, even in our region, we have white people still running the government. You go to the BVIs, you go to Cayman, you go to Bermuda, so So anyway, um, the U.S. has, a large black population, as you know, in excess of 20 million. Um, Brazil is still a larger population. Um, we felt that it was important for the bicentenary, that's the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the Slave Trade Act, which was passed on the 25th of March, 1807, that the Caribbean countries should pay attention to that date and use the UN as the beacon of human rights to say that this horrific crime against humanity, that was slavery for 400 centuries, must never, ever happen again. And we, the descendants of the enslaved, that we will stand up and say, and be counted. So when this challenge came, the ambassador said to me, Crispin, I think you are the guy, you are the person that's going to lead that challenge. I said, me? He said, yeah, you. And I said, okay, well, I can, if that's the wish of the CARICOM countries, I will do it. Wadix, I didn't know how difficult it was. It sounded easy, but it's going to be a difficult one that could create problems for us. But here's the thing. It's Dominica leading. It's not Crispin Gregoire. I'm representing a country, and that country is leading the charge to make sure that there'll be an international day of remembrance of the people who perished in the transatlantic Middle Passage, and those who died on the plantations, and those who had to run away and they were still killed by massa. So I started that journey, and Wadix, one of the most interesting episodes in that journey, I called a meeting of all the slave trading countries. And that was a painful one because I had UK there, France, Denmark, the Netherlands, Portugal, Holland, and that's Netherlands, yes, and there's one that I'm missing, but one of those, Spain, not there. And then one of those that's not well known is Denmark. Denmark owned the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and St. John. That's why those islands there were Danish. The U.S. bought these islands, I think, about 1917. So all of these powers,
over 100 years ago.
Yes, all of these powers around the table with me, the son or great grandson of an enslaved African, talking to them about, we're going to recognize this date and we want their cooperation. And they did. They willingly did. They actually, not only did they support the resolution, because to do anything at the UN, you have to pass a resolution. Mm-hmm. And I, as I was preparing to make this trip, I found a file in it where the British government is expressing to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Roseau about the resolution we are proposing. And they're saying that they wouldn't support it if there was certain language in the resolution, and they're asking us to make some changes. And I'm flexible. As a diplomat, which I came to be, I became a master of writing resolutions. And Wadix, in a resolution, a resolution is like a law, a piece of legislation. That's what the UN uses. And they can be, they're not binding, but you're supposed to follow them. So the resolution to do the commemoration of the 200 years, we passed it in 2006, December, in the General Assembly. And in 2007 was when the actual Day of Remembrance started, the first one. And it had the full support of the African Union. So that's 54 countries right there, plus the 14 CARICOM. That makes us 68, a bloc. And it also brings Africa and the Caribbean closer. It kind of cements a kind of a bond. So much so, Wadix, that the African states now say, this must now be an annual event. And that's how it became an annual event. So we go back to the General Assembly and we pass a resolution in 2007 to make it an annual event. And this year is the 20th year of this.
How significant is that 20th year to us, despite the fact that we are not celebrating this day? How significant it is for us and the other islands within the CARICOM unit, the CARICOM, fraternity.
Yes.
How significant is this day?
It's a very significant day because it brought freedom. That day, we've been fighting for that. I mean, the Negmao of Dominica and the Maroons of Jamaica and the Maroons of Suriname and those of Guyana, they've been fighting for years, for their freedom. In Barbados, every single island, there was resistance.
Any islands in the Caribbean celebrating this day as we speak? By
Yes.
the way, the day is the March 25th.
Yes,
right?
yes.
March
And
25th.
this year will be Wednesday, this coming
Wednesday will be that special day.
Yes.
Any of the islands in the Caribbean celebrating this particular day?
Yes, Trinidad celebrates it. And of course, the United Nations Information Center for this sub-region is in Trinidad. They commemorate it. I think Belize also commemorates. I know those two countries, Trinidad and Belize.
But in as much, as a bloc, you fought for a day for the remembrance of such a travesty. And from all reports, it is the worst in the history of humanity. What had transpired during slavery is the worst ever towards humanity. And we in the Caribbean, we face the brunt. We still have the after effects.
Yes.
We still have the scars. We are living proof of the scars of slavery. Why aren't more of the countries embracing it, including Dominica? Why are more of the other countries, including Dominica, who actually was part of establishing that day, not celebrating it?
I don't know. That's a good question for the governments to answer. And they should be recognizing that day better, but they don't. But it's a big event at the UN. What we have is a special meeting of the General Assembly on this issue. I noticed that this year it will be at 10 a.m. They have it at different times of the day, but this year it's at 10 a.m. Typically, that's when the UN meetings start at 10 a.m. And then this year, the theme for the commemoration is Justice in Action, Confronting History, Advancing Dignity, Empowering Futures. And that's the theme. And so it's become an annual event, but closely linked to the International Day, WADIX is another thing that I got involved into, similar, and that is the UN Slavery Memorial.
We'll get to that in a while.
Yeah.
I still want to deal with the day because
Yes.
I believe that the Caribbean nationals, and I'm not referring to just Dominica, we are not as aggressive as we should be. I'm not sure if we're not educated enough about what transpired, our forefathers went through. That we're not, when events like this come along, we're not embracing it. Even African Liberation Day in Dominica, Africa Day in Dominica, there is a fight for reparation. It's like our people, despite all our struggles, there seem to be a resistance. And I'm not talking only about Dominica to accept it. Is it education that we're not educating our people enough about the significance of these events, activities these days?
Yeah. Well, Wadix, on reflection, I think that there are two things about our societies in the Caribbean. One is that we're not teaching enough history to our people. Like, for example, Dominica. And that's not unique to Dominica. We don't teach the history of Dominica in the schools, in the curriculum. It's non-existent. and our history is is rich. It's a history of resistance. It's a history of conquest. You have the Kalinago people here, you know. So it's like here you have the original people, and then the people who were brought as enslaved Africans, and we don't teach enough about it. I in the last years I've got myself immersed in the history of the Kalinago people, and the connections of the Kalinago people to the African, the runaway Africans, the Maroons. Quite a lot of very interesting stuff, and some of that is in the British archives in UK. I'm hoping that we'll have a set of young historians who will now write the Dominica story, like Dr. Honeychurch. He's the trailblazer, but I'd like to see more young historians, and who will publish, who will print. There's a lot of...
But firstly, I mean, yes, historians, yes. But most of what Lennox did was kind of on his own and his own passion.
Yes.
But then how are we going to expose our young people to the consciousness of our history and how important our history is to us, so that our younger generation and generations to come can see the importance and relevance?
Yes.
Because it seemed to be a Caribbean deficiency. When you look at what's happening to cricket, when you look at we used to be a formidable force,
yes.
and it wasn't just brute talent, but we were fighting because we were black.
Yeah.
We saw what people like Viv Richards did against apartheid, refused the money, refused to be rich, to take a stance against apartheid. Mm-hmm. We saw what Muhammad Ali did. You know, we saw these great guys and they are there.
Yeah.
The younger historians, how are they going to be emerge? How are they going to emerge from a space where they are hardly exposed to that Dominican, that Caribbean history?
Yeah, they can emerge because, in fact, the technology we have today to do research didn't exist 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. when I was when I was in school. You know, I mean, we had to. In fact, with that smartphone you have in your hand is a small computer, and if you are taught properly how to use it, it can, right in where you are in the village in La Plaine or whether you are in Paybush, you can find out historical facts, data on your phone, but you got to know where to go, and that is what we're not being taught. We're not teaching where are the places to go and learn stuff. A lot of people have cell phones, smartphones, and they for entertainment.
And only to make calls.
But that piece of equipment in your hand is a research tool. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of my research on the phone.
I was told by Gordon Anderson several years ago that just when that whole migration thrust started, when quite a bit of people were just leaving the Caribbean, heading to the UK by any means, and even to the US, that even people in Dominica were ashamed to say they were from Dominica because of the accent.
Yes.
And that possibly was one of the reasons why when they migrated, they would yank.
Yes.
So that the authorities wouldn't recognize that they were from, let's say, you know.
Yeah.
Is it that we are not proud enough of our heritage, of that melanin that flows within us, and the history and the sacrifice of our forefathers? Because if we understand the sacrifice, and one must not believe that the people our forefathers that were taking over Africa were stupid people.
Right.
A lot of them were intelligent, were doctors, were already, and they defied.
Yeah.
They couldn't handle it. They decided, they running away, and they became, according to books, and they named us Negmawa, or runaway slaves.
Right. Yeah. Well,
but then we have to get to the level where we have to understand our consciousness, and not only understand, but be proud enough to be able to, because the sacrifices were made already.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, Dominica is unique in all of this. Dominica and St. Vincent. I mean, because the Kalinago peoples, they waged a war of resistance from the time they were colonized. Now, these two islands were the last to be colonized. We're talking about 1760s, whereas St. Kitts and Barbados were colonized in 1620. So, you know, the Dominica and St. Vincent Kalinagos prevented the colonial conquest of Dominica. And that is a very important history for us to learn, but we don't learn this stuff. There are people who have written. I mean, there was one of the most celebrated Dominican historians. His name is, his last name is Borome, Borome. He was a legendary professor at City University of New York. He wrote a lot on Dominica's history. He wrote on how Spain colonized Dominica, the Dominica under French occupation. He wrote a number of articles, scholarly articles. And there's a book that was published by the Dominica government under Premier Leblanc. It's called Aspects of Dominican History. You might still be able to get copies from the printery. I don't know if they still have copies, but that is a legendary, important piece of work of several authors. It's a reader. And even the man who was the principal of the Dominica Grammar School back when I was going to high school, Dr. Cecil Goodrich, he's actually written in that book. So that book was available from the printery. I don't know if they still have copies, but it's important for us to learn the history of each of the countries. And it gets it gets complicated because there's so many countries in the Caribbean.
No, I remember we used to have as a textbook the West Indian Reader.
Yes.
Where we would have stories about
Nancy,
from various Caribbean leaders.
Yes.
Bustamante, the Eric Williams, and these other people. Even Mighty Sparrow was part of that whole, you know, in terms of culture. He
Yes.
became eventually a doctor. But let's head back to the remembrance. Can you identify and inform us as to the key objectives of the day of that remembrance? This coming Wednesday, what are some of the objectives? What are actually motivated the actual day itself?
Right.
So we can get a better understanding of some of the objectives.
Right. Well, one of the things was to sensitize the world to the horrors of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, and the legacy that it left behind, and that is racism, prejudice based on skin color. And we're saying it's time for that to end. Skin color should not be something that defines who you are. And up to this day, we have that problem. And you know, there's an unfortunate development happening in the United States that's quite troubling, Wadix, and that is there's an attempt to rewrite the slavery history. I don't know. I wish them well. I wish those people who want to do that well. But I say to them that the letter S for slavery is an indelible mark on the American United States psyche. You can never erase slavery from the psyche of United States. Ever. So those who want to try to rewrite the slavery history and don't emphasize that, and they're against affirmative action, which was done to make sure that there was redress for the people who worked for centuries in America, building America. Even the White House was built by enslaved Africans. You know, and when I look across the U.S., what I see in the different cities, which is what the enslaved Africans contributed to the United States. You can't pay the black people, you know. So it was really to bring honor to those who perished, whether they perished on the plantations, whether they perished in the Middle Passage, whether they perished in a war of trying to get them not to run away. We cannot forget them. and that was what the whole initiative of the CARICOM countries was, to say to the 193 countries of the world that we suffered. Our history had a lot of blood on it, and we want to not forget. And we use the term, lest we forget, never to forget. And that is why this has happened. Now, at the time, WADIX, when we started this, there was no money from the UN for that. I had to go begging every year from 2006 to 2010, governments to give us money to do this thing. And I said, you know what? Before I leave that role, I'm going to make sure the UN start paying for this, because I'm tired of going to raise money. The country that had nose, and they always had nose about new money in the budget at the UN, is Japan. And I said, okay, I'll deal with Japan. Don't worry, I'll make them come around. And I got the Jamaicans to make a démarche to the embassy of Japan in Kingston. And the Japanese ambassador yielded, and he said he was going to send a message back to his capital that they should support this. And they finally supported it. And once they supported it, every year since, it's been funded by the UN budget. I am a little worried now that since the Trump administration has cut the UN, their contribution to the UN by 20%, whether something like this will budget
survive,
for it.
Right. Survive, yeah.
But I'm saying to the countries, the CARICOM countries, the onus will be on them now to make sure that the program survives. And if they have to get voluntary contributions from other member states who have means, do that. But don't let that day die. It has to be there. And what is fascinating for me as the person who is deemed the founder of the day is to see the number of countries year after year that are now having activities. So places not only in Africa or the Caribbean, but also in Asia, also in Eastern Europe, and so on. I had the chance to work in Eastern Europe. I worked in about 6 or 7 Eastern European countries after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And there's a greater appreciation of the Eastern Europeans to Africa,
than we the diaspora would appreciate.
Yes.
I'm very important. Even before we go to the act, let's give some data. In as much we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade.
Yes.
What's the number of people we're talking about that were affected by this?
Yeah, during the trade, we're talking about 16 million people of enslaved Africans from different parts of the continent. You'll find that the majority of people who were brought to the Caribbean would have come from West Africa and Central Africa. And you can see a microcosm of that right here in Dominica. For example, if you take Granby District had several estates. Different enslaved people were brought to these estates. But one of the things you find in Granby is there are a lot of Igbo people in that
Nigerians,
Eastern Nigerians. A lot of the Granby people are actually Igbos. They're Eastern Nigerians.
What is the characteristics of the Igbo people? Militancy or
militancy is one.
Cultural.
Yeah, cultural. But there's certain words they use that is in our Creole.
Okay.
Like for example, beke. The word beke. That's what we call white man, right?
Yeah.
That's the same word in Igbo for white
right.
man.
Okay.
Yeah. There's some other words that come from other languages like Yoruba that is in our Creole. Like for example, the word babaole. Babaole, we use it to call a yam.
Yeah.
But babaole means in Yoruba language, it means chief of thieves. When I was in Nigeria, I learned that the reason they call that yam babaole is because it spreads and takes over a whole area once you plant the yam. So that's why they call it babaole yam. So it's linked that name comes from the Yoruba language, right? Wadix, when I was in Nigeria and I go to Eastern Nigeria, I traveled a good bit in the country. It's no small country. It's really big, and they have 230 million people. I go to Eastern Nigeria and I see that they eat pounded food, which tonton, and it's their hands, and they're telling me that.
I remember at some point in time we did that here in Dominica.
Right.
Tonton pile.
Tonton pile, right? And so eating that, they actually pound yam, right? More the white yam than, and then they also eat cassava. Nigeria is the world's largest producer and consumer of cassava. Cassava came from our region, from the Caribbean. During the slave trade, it crossed on the ships going to Africa. So Grand Bay now has people from the Congo Basin. If you go to a little community called Bordio, the estate there was owned by the Bellots, and still owned by the children of the Bellots. The people there, their ancestors, a lot of them came from the Congo Basin. They are different from the Lale people. And one of the ways they are different is by their cultural expression. First of all, no one could beat them in the carnival with their drums. They had just amazing drums. And when that drum start beating up in that mountain of Tetmon area, you can stay in Lale and hear it. And when that band reach Tet Lale, typically the Lale people are not happy and their fights break out.
I'm happy you mentioning that, because just for the people and educational purposes, the slaves or the enslaved were brought across from the African continent.
Yes.
And they were intentionally displaced. In other words, whoever they know that were from the same tribes or from the same area, they would make sure that they send them to different areas of Dominica or areas of the various plantations,
right,
so that they would not be able to communicate.
Yes.
And the reason why Creole was created is because the enslaved then had to get a means of communication.
Exactly.
And that means of communication eventually became Creole.
That's right.
Okay. Any data of, let's say, the numbers of slaves that actually landed here? Any data on that?
There is data. I don't know that figure, but there is data. And one of the things that I've been tracking is how much money the planters got.
Yes.
For the slaves at the end of slavery. They got paid for every slave they had. The slaves got no money.
At the abolition,
yes,
when abolition took place, the slave owners got compensated.
That's correct.
For the abolition.
Yes. Yeah, they did. Wow. But the enslaved got nothing.
Got nothing.
Right? So there is data by London University that shows you how much each estate owner got for compensation.
Now, critically again is we had more French slave owners, and there were also English slave owners.
Yes.
In Dominica.
Oh, absolutely. Well, what happened is that the first set of plantation owners were French. Bellot is one. It's actually Bello in French. The Bellots had a lot of estates. I should say that I have a Bellot connection. I have master connection in some way, yes. But the Bellots at Grand Bay, my grandfather was a Bellot. He was one of the last planters in Grand Bay.
So you would have any idea of which areas in Dominica that would have had the French? The English,
right? So
the conspicuous areas.
So you find that a lot of the estates on the west coast became English. Yeah, like in the south part, many of the estates they were French owners, right?
That's why the Creole is still very prevalent in the south.
Yes, and the south always had a connection with Martinique.
Yeah.
Whereas the north more with Guadeloupe, right? But what the British did when they colonized Dominica, and finally there was a war between France and England, and the French lost. Yeah, that last war in 1763, when the Dominica became French, became English. the plantations didn't immediately change. Some of the French planters sold to English people. What the English did is they resurveyed the whole island into lots, and people in England started buying land thinking it's like Barbados. No, sometimes they bought ravines, they bought riverbeds, not knowing where. They're just buying land thinking it's like Barbados, but this is not, So when they realized what they had, they started selling. There was a lot of absentee buying and a lot of absentee selling. But the southern part, both southwest and southeast, continued to be French. So you go to Soufrière, and Grand Bay is just at the back of Soufrière. So that the Grand Bay and Soufrière very much tied to Martinique.
Okay, and the West Coast, you say, was primarily English.
English. So a lot
What
of
about the northern
not
section?
all the way to maybe as far as Clifton. But on the other side of the island, the east, there were no roads to the east.
Yeah.
And so that's why plantations didn't really develop that much on the eastern side, because there were no roads, The first road that was built to try to get to the east was the Transinsular Road, which take you to Marigot from Pont-Cassé. And it took them many, many years. It took the British many, many years to make that road.
Okay, let's move across now to the activity, the theme this year, Crispin. Tell us about the theme this year.
Yeah, the theme again is Justice in Action, Confronting History, Advancing Dignity, and Empowering Futures. So, justice, one of them is call for reparations, major part of that.
Will we ever get within our lifetime, in your mind, in your opinion, will we ever reach to some resolution where we will get some level of reparation ever?
I'm a little pessimistic as to whether we'll ever get money. The Europeans and the Americans, who we expect to pay these reparations, there's no definitive commitment from them, and I don't see that coming. Now, it's possible that they might decide to give us development assistance, aid money to do certain things,
which is still okay. It's value.
Like for example, invest in universities, for example, in all of the islands. Help us with economic transitioning, because slavery did a lot of negative things to our societies and our people and our psyche as a people. That is why, you were saying earlier whether people are ashamed of having a slavery past and even the way language.
I say that because sometimes I look at American television, and some of the black guys, they cannot be that more darker than me.
Yes.
But then, the philosophy is so white. I hate to discriminate, but their philosophy is so anti-black, and you tend to wonder, whether they are proud or whether they are really black, but their mindset. And one of the major things I think hurdles that we are going through is the psychological scars.
Yes.
And we continuously. And also let's say the diet. I believe some of the scars, if we look at some of what we take, a lot of our diet, because of what the slaves had to and had to deal with, that's why we're high in salt, high in sugar. There were lots of things that had to be preserved.
Right.
There wasn't the technology like now. So these scars are with us. But the psychological scars, where our confidence level is, and we are so great, we have done so much as a people, one of the most successful people ever in this universe, but there are still small developing states like ours we are not as confident of our position that we should take when we look at the United Nations level.
Right.
And I'm not referring to, let's say, just Dominica, but the entire Caribbean.
Right.
We see the manipulation of, let's say, what's going on presently with the American, the American system. There's quite a bit of manipulation because of universal power. But it takes a lot of courage and guts to understand the sacrifice, Crispin.
Yeah.
And that is where the psychological toughness is necessary. The psychological toughness where principle before whatever.
Yeah.
It's like you know what you have gone through to be where you are, to know where you want to go. And regardless of where you want to go, we shouldn't sidetrack or allow people to, because they're more powerful than us, to sidetrack us. So that's psychological. We see it in our everyday lives.
Right. Well, it's we are in a unique region of the world. We are in the backyard of the world's major power. But then there are some middle powers in our region too. I mean, Brazil is a middle power. Colombia could easily be a middle power. Venezuela could be a middle power. In fact, Venezuela's aspiration is to be the middle power after the U.S. in this hemisphere, in this sub-region.
Can Cuba be considered a middle?
Not as big as Venezuela, but pretty advanced though. I think the Cubans, in the 67 years that of the revolution of Fidel Castro and Raul Castro, Cuba has established itself as a major point in the Caribbean.
Especially health-wise.
Right, but
Leader.
not only health. I mean, in terms of, imagine the Cubans sending troops to fight the South African army in the 1970s so that South Africa could be free, Angola could get their independence, Mozambique get their independence. The Cuban army defeated the South African army on the battlefield, and changed the whole
narrative of
apartheid.
apartheid.
Exactly, and brought apartheid to its end, to its knees.
Okay, now, Crispin, let's move across to the architect.
Yeah.
The special memorial architect designed by Rodney Leon.
Yes.
What is it? What it entails? Significance.
Right. So after we got the International Day of Remembrance adopted by the General Assembly, that's the fait accompli. We're now moving on to the next phase. And the next phase, in the eyes of the Jamaican ambassador and the Dominican ambassador, that's me, we now say our next stage is we want a memorial at the UN to remind the world that atrocity was a crime against humanity, must never ever happen again. And we want we want something at the UN that will show that. So we launched a design competition with UNESCO as the facilitator of that competition. And so there were wonderful submissions, I must say, very creative. But the man who won it is the Haitian American. This is the second monument that he has designed in New York City.
Wow.
One is at the African Burial Ground in Lower Manhattan. That's a place that they were going to build a federal building. And that happened around 1990, 91. When they started digging for the foundation, they found human remains. They found bones. And that was actually a place that enslaved Africans were buried.
Wow.
So they said, wait a minute, this place has to be a sacred ground. And they made it into a monument to the slaves of New York City. Rodney Leon, he was successful second time to get the design for the UN Slavery Memorial. And he calls it the Ark of Return. So it's like a ship that's returning, this time not with enslaved Africans, but with people who were free. and to build these societies. And it's like an ark. It's like Noah's Ark, right? An ark. So it's a boat. You can actually enter it inside the inside of it. It's made out of marble, and then inside of it there's etchings of, for example, what a slave ship looked like. It's etched into the, and then there's a live replica of a slave lying on the ship.
Wow.
So it's in almost a full body replica of a slave. And then there's some words about freedom and justice and so on. And you know, Wadix, all of this, when I came to the UN, the UN conference on racism had been held in Durban, South Africa, around maybe 2 years before I came to the UN. And that conference had laid out how the UN would chart a path to address systemic racism.
Okay, continue, because we seem to be going to be getting a live report there from Curtis Matthew on the City Council. We know of that special historic City Council, 17 people actually vying for to be members of the City Council. So we now go over to, we're getting set. This is a special Creole Heartbeat program, and like we promised you, at some point in time, we'll be getting a report from the news editor at DBS Radio, Curtis Matthew, on the results of that special election. Let's move across to Studio 1 and say good evening to you, Curtis Matthew.
Good evening to you, Ambassador Leroy Wadix Charles. Good afternoon to you. And in fact, good evening to you, Ambassador Crispin Gregoire.
Good evening.
It's good to have you in for a great program this evening. Now, let me just bring you some of the results. In fact, the results of the Roseau City Council elections 2026. The elections took place today, and I can confirm just a while ago, I think the people at the electoral office completed the process, and we want to bring you the results.
Africa. Some of the benefits. Yes. Okay, Curtis Matthew.
In Ward 1.
Yes.
The winners in Ward 1, Ermin Roye, 203 votes. Moisha Joseph, 200 votes. Lenny John Baptist, 185. Samantha Robinson, 129. Kashma Richards, 121. So these are the results for Ward 1. Let's just run through it again quickly. Ermin Roye, 203 votes. Moisha Joseph, 200. Lenny John Baptist, 185. Samantha Robinson, 129. And Kashma Richards, 121. The results in Ward 2. Paloma Mark, 306 votes. Kenny John Baptist, as of course Kenny John Baptist. Kenny G, 235 votes. Rhoda St. John, 149. Kelvin Roll, 127. Jason John Baptist, 125. Dunstan Maggie Peters with 62. In Ward 3, Quincy Angold, 98. Michael Morrow, 80. And Christina Sobers, 31. Finally, the Ward 4. Lucy Bell Matthew, 408. Carlene Beaupierre, 196. But in second place is Sherman Boston with 267. So that's Ward 4, Lucy Bell Matthew, 408. Sherman Boston, 267. And Carlene Beaupierre, 196. These are the preliminary results in the Roseau City Council elections. They will meet again tomorrow to look at the final vote.
Just quickly, Curtis, in each of the wards, how many of the various participants will move to the General City Council?
Right, so the top two winning will head to the City Council. Of course, the government will also have their nominees. But
from the elections.
Right, from the elections, the top two. So
we can just give us the top two in each ward.
Right,
the preliminary results of the top two.
I will do that for you again. Ward 1, the top two, Ermin Roye 203, Moisha Joseph 200. In Ward 2, Paloma Mac 306, Kenny G. John Baptiste 235. Ward 3, Quincy Angol 98, Michael Morrow 80. And in Ward 4, 408, Lucibel Matthew, and second, Sherman Boston 267.
So Curtis Murphy, that's 8. So the government would now add how many members to that?
I am not very clear. I'm sure if the Cecil Joseph was here, he would tell us how that go. I think the government will nominate a few, and then they will set up the rest.
Can we safely say that may just make headline news tomorrow?
Yeah, that certainly will be the headline news item. Unless something else happens, I cannot see why that the council elections in Roseau will not be the top story tomorrow.
From the reports that you have been getting from the electoral office, was this a big turnout?
They cannot say yet.
In terms of turnout.
Right. As we spoke, they want to believe it may be a very big turnout. But these things have to go through some processes before they can determine whether this, in fact, was maybe one of the bigger elections we had for the Roseau City Council.
But at least one of the most interesting.
Very interesting. You had a few people there who had a chance. They felt that they could have gone through. Some were disappointed that they could not go through. But all in all, a good election in the city of Roseau.
Just before you leave, I know you were actually premiering all the candidates, and this took place on major news headlines throughout the entire season before the elections. You gave each one a chance to actually tell Dominica by extension what are some of the plans. And the final day, today, it actually made it, and we will hear from the electoral officer. Not yet, or we get some all kind of instructions taking place. But we'll get the rest of the information tomorrow on the headline news.
Certainly, it's the first time I think we have embarked on a project like that as DBS News. We've never done that before, where we had a chance to speak to every candidate in the election. This has never happened before, but DBS News decided to go ahead with it, to interview the candidates, to speak to them, and I thought at the end of the day it was really a good thing to have all candidates speaking on DBS Radio just before the elections.
I'm looking forward to the day when we'll be seeing you live on television, live on Channel 50 with the headline news. Excellent work, news editor at DBS Radio.
You and the ambassador, you're doing a fine job. We want to hear the rest of that show tonight.
Thank you very much. That was King Curtis Matthew. You heard from the news editor at DBS Radio the final results from the elections. 8 winners, and you will get more details on that tomorrow on DBS's 7 o'clock news. Back to you, Ambassador. We were just heading to the section where just seemed to be some movement between the Caribbean and Africa to get closer together, to forge relationships. Your opinion, and what are some of the areas in terms of development we can look towards in forging relationships with our African partners?
Right. Well, you know, Wadix, soon after we became independent, there was many initiatives to link up between Africa and the Caribbean. The first real relationship was developed between the government, the People's Republic of, the People's Government, PRG, People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada, under Maurice Bishop.
Yeah.
They had many partnerships with African countries. In fact, one of the African countries that actually financed them was Algeria. Yeah, and then on the issue of Western Sahara, that continues to be a troublesome issue and it's before the UN, and there is a UN security peacekeeping force in Western Sahara. Dominica was the second country in the whole Caribbean, even before Cuba, to recognize the liberation movement for the independence of Western Sahara. That was under Prime Minister Oliver Serafin. Quite a visionary outlook. He was very clear, and I have spoken to him in recent times. And the Western Saharans and the Algerians hold in high esteem the Dominican people, because we had just become independent in 1978, and by 79 we are supporting the liberation movement. But even before that, going back to Premier Edward Oliver LeBlanc, his government had actually made a financial contribution to the African National Congress, or fighting for the liberation of South Africa. And that was like, we're talking about like 1967 or 68. Yeah. So we've had a relationship with Africa already. Unfortunately, we didn't maintain, and then but they did not forget us. The Algerians actually offered Dominica a cooperation agreement. Unfortunately, our government did not accept it, and that was an unfortunate thing. But that country would have invested a lot of money in Dominica, because they and we were the only country picked by them to help. And the reason for that, Wadix, is because the solidarity that we express with the people of Western Sahara, just like we were a colony of England, they were a colony of Spain. But Spain did not give them their independence. Spain allowed things to deteriorate, and one day Spain just packed up and left the territory. And what happened was Morocco and Mauritania, the two neighboring countries, they moved in troops into the territory and said it was their land. But the International Court of Justice, this went to court at the International Court of Justice, and the International Court of Justice said in 1976 that neither Mauritania, neither Morocco have any historic claim to this place called Western Sahara, and that they should grant them their independence, and that Spain or the UN should find a way to give independence to this country. So we supported them. We supported Western Sahara. And to this day, a large number of Dominicans support Western Sahara right to self-determination, that they were a colony like we were a colony, and they're yet to get their independence. They're the last colony left in Africa whose independence status needs to be defined. And the UN has done a really poor job, Wadix, because the UN was supposed
regulating that.
they were supposed to do a referendum, and the result of the referendum implemented. The UN, up to this day, since 1991, has been incapable of doing the referendum. Okay. And it's because major powers are not interested. You see, France would like Western Sahara to stay the way it is because they support Morocco, and the Algerians support Western Saharans. Now, the Algerians, I have a lot of respect for the Algerians, I'll tell you that. And that is because Algeria is one of the countries in Africa that fought for their independence and defeated the French and kicked them out. And you know, the legendary heroic struggle of the Algerian people, I mean, one cannot gloss over that. Algeria wanted to be our friend. We didn't really want them to be our friends then, but one day they will be our friend. I think that they're the country in Africa that more wants to help us than anybody else. Another country is Nigeria. And Nigeria has helped us in the past. I mean, under the administration of Prime Minister Eugene Charles, the Nigerians, we had a cooperation program where they sent us professionals, doctors, nurses, nurse instructors, surveyors, and others. And Nigeria is a country with a lot of trained people. They can actually help us. And the Nigerians, you know, one of the things they said to me after Hurricane Maria, that is, we could help Dominica become the cassava capital of the Caribbean. They can do it. They are the country, they're the largest producer of cassava in the world. They're the largest producer of cassava processing equipment. Even now, the Chinese are now copying their fabrications, and now the Chinese companies are now trying to sell Nigeria cassava processing equipment when the Nigerians already know how to make this, but they see an opportunity, it's a market.
We will the national airport, when it finally becomes to a reality, bring the continent closer.
Oh, definitely. There will be
And
direct flights.
Direct flights I would expect
the
from
continent.
the African continent.
Listen, it on a direct flight to Ghana from New York is 9 hours.
9 hours.
It might be even shorter from the Caribbean
To
to
Ghana.
Ghana. And a good thing that happened, let me just say one thing that's important for the population to hear that, and that is Ghana is one of the first countries on the African continent that has allowed visa-free entry
Yes.
by Dominicans.
I just read that I think 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Benin is one of those that
second one.
that's one of those that I'm actually accepting the diaspora
You-
that wants passports
Yes.
to do their necessary investigations.
Right.
And I was amazed that Ghana also.
Yes.
So Dominicans, Caribbean people can now get Ghanaian passports.
Right, right.
Which is very interesting. Do we have ties with Ghana? I mean,
We have diplomatic relations with
relations.
Ghana, and fairly good. I mean, the fact that they would give us visa-free entry into Ghana is significant. We do have Ghanaian ancestry here too.
yes.
Yeah, we do, especially the people around Portsmouth. A lot of them have Ghanaian ancestry. It's interesting. I mean, they brought enslaved people to different estates, and so you never know. The ship arrived today, and the planters came out and they saw these enslaved Africans and say, okay, this one, I'll get those, and then they took them to, let us say, to any estate you can think of. There's an estate in Girondale called Babia. Do you know Babia?
I haven't heard of this one.
Okay, Babia is the estate that the Trotters eventually inherited. When I used to go to Babia with Desmond Trotter. Now I went and I looked up the estate called Babia, and to see how many enslaved Africans were there. We have those numbers. So for each of the estates, we have numbers.
Yeah.
Now the question is, where did they come from? Which places in Africa? We know that a lot of them came from West Africa, from Senegal. So you have Senegal, Ivory Coast, Mali, Gambia. Then you have Benin Republic, Togo, then Nigeria, right?
Is it in terms of trade? And I want us to look at it on we producers
Right.
of several products can have that closest in terms of trade and benefit directly from our African forefathers. I mean, how feasible this is, how possible this is, because I can feel there is a level of interest. I said even Barbados, I heard just recently, is looking towards the African continent.
Yes. Yeah.
Because just seem to be the way, in as much a lot of the other islands are now shown in the Caribbean, in particular the big man America.
Yes.
But there seem to be that market.
Right.
Is available. And hopefully, if God willing, the international airport would reach to a particular level that trade could be enhanced and really improve our income.
Yes. Well, I think trade is going to increase. Here's why. Already, the biggest African airline, Ethiopian Airlines, is talking about flying to the Caribbean.
Wow.
Now that'll be a significant new development when that happens. And their board has already made the decision. They are looking at where they will fly into the
By the way,
Caribbean.
Ethiopia is the only African country to never be colonized, right?
Right, yeah. They
were never colonized.
Never colonized, yeah. The Italians tried, and they were defeated by Emperor Haile Selassie's forces, right?
But so you're talking about the airlines?
Yeah, so I think that African airlines will start flying. Already, there's an airline flying that's supposed to be flying into Antigua, Air Peace, which is a Nigerian airline. They were the ones who invested in the new Liat. So Earpiece, which is he's a businessman from Eastern Nigeria. I think he's Igbo, and he's invested into the new Liat. And started. They were supposed to start charter flights from Nigeria to Antigua in December. I don't know if that has
What's
happened.
the approximate duration
Of the distance?
of the flight from Nigeria to Antigua?
It would
10
be
hours?
about 9 hours. Yeah,
Wow.
about 9 hours.
Do you eliminate the Europe leg and all
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you fly east from here, if you fly east, you end up in West Africa.
Yeah.
You pass Cape Verde and you are in West Africa, right? So I think here's what I think will happen going forward. The Caribbean countries don't have a large population, so it's not a big market for trade. However, there are pockets. I mean, Haiti is the largest population in the CARICOM, but Cuba has a bigger population. If futuristically, Cuba will become part of CARICOM. I see that. The Dominican Republic will become part of CARICOM. So when that happens, our market will triple, and consequently, it will be attractive for African countries to say, okay, maybe we can invest there. Already, you have the Afrimex Bank. They're setting up the headquarters for the region in Barbados, so that African governments can finance investment ventures in the Caribbean, and that is going to happen. They've already built the headquarters for that bank. Now, what I think will happen, this meeting that happened, the summit of the Caribbean leaders and the African Union last year September, which is a very, very good development. We already had the first summit, but it was done virtual because of the COVID. But for last year, the leaders went to Addis Ababa and met their African counterparts, and that was a great meeting of Africa and the Caribbean. What I see will happen next is that each of the Caribbean countries must now zero in on which countries in Africa will be important to them. Like, for example, I think Nigeria will be important to Dominica, partly because we have Nigerian ancestry here, right? With Jamaica,
And then we have quite a bit of Nigerian nationals here.
yeah, and who have married.
They have integrated. There's
Right.
a community here.
For some reason, the Nigerians are ahead of the pack. Well, I should.
But you marry a Nigerian yourself. You promised to take me to Nigeria, Crispin.
I know I'm gonna take you.
You promised to take me to Nigeria.
I must admit that the Dominican women are not so fond of me for not having.
Marry a Dominican.
Right. I tried. I mean,
But your heart was stolen by a Nigerian.
Yes, and then my mother did say to me, and because this is my second marriage, and she said to me, "It must be a Dominican woman, right?" I said, "Yes, Mom, I will be." And I was looking actively, and there was one, and she fell out of my grasp. What can I say? So the Nigerian women were, they can see an eligible bachelor down the road.
Yes. And by the way, we can now open the lines in case anyone would like to call and to be part of the experience. This is DBS Radio Special Creole Heartbeat program with Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. You're also the Goodwill Ambassador for Zanzibar.
International Film Festival. Yes.
International Film Festival, as we speak.
Well, Wadix, I spent 6 years living in Africa and based in Nigeria mostly. But because I worked for the Ford Foundation, and they have an office. The office for North Africa is in Egypt. Office for West Africa in Nigeria. Office for East Africa is in Kenya. Office for Southern Africa is in South Africa. So I was working with all of these offices, and they would send me to different places to do things. So how I got to Zanzibar, they told me, there's a film festival that we are funding. The foundation I work for is a funder, and they told me, we want you to go and help them with a strategic plan. So they sent me to Zanzibar, and Zanzibar is an island. It's a little bigger than Dominica. Lovely island. They have some of the most spectacular beaches in the world. And I went there and I did a plan for them. And that was actually my last assignment before I went to the UN for Dominica. So I did this plan and I asked them, what is it you all want? They said they want their festival to become the #1 film festival in Africa. So I set out to work. I said to them, that will be difficult because Burkina Faso has FESPACO, which is the largest film festival in Africa. But they said they'll be happy for second place, and they want me to come up with a plan for them that will get them there. And Wadix, you won't believe, every recommendation I made to them, they implemented. Today, they're the second largest film festival in Africa.
How can we collaborate culturally with the African continent? You said that your preference would be Nigeria. We know Nigeria is very rich in terms of the film industry. We know
Yes.
they are also very rich in Afrobeat.
That's right.
And the music industry is phenomenal those days.
Yeah.
And they although quite a bit. And we have been seeing, we have been bringing several Nigerian artists to Dominica.
Yes. Right.
Okay. For instance, I can tell you off my head, Wizkid, Omale, several Nigerian artists. What is the guy? Burna Boy.
Yeah.
Nigerian artists to Dominica. Oh, we have a call coming in? Okay. So several of our Nigerian, within our festival itself.
Yes.
What about the relationship where we can possibly have the return? Exile One, Gordon Henderson
Yes.
told me that one of the major achievements of Exile One is they toured, I think, over 11 countries in Africa. So which means there's some level of a foundation set
Yes.
with Kadaslips music, which is very similar. There are so many similarities with what you're hearing from the Afro
Yeah.
when you listen to them and what you listen to us. So with that foundation set by, let's say, Exile One, a call is coming in. Just hold the Exile One thought. Let's take in our first call. Good evening. The lines are open. Good evening, Honorable Ambassador Crispin. Gregoire is in the building. Good evening to you, Creole Heartbeat. We are not hearing. Okay, we are not hearing producer. I'm not sure if the person is on.
Hi, what is?
Yes, we are hearing now. Good evening to you.
Good evening. This is Marcelina Angle John.
Good evening to you, my dear.
Good evening.
Yes, hi, Crispin.
Hi. Hello, how are you?
I am good, thank you. I don't know when you all started, but I got the notification from Wadik, and I was listening to you all talking about Beke.
Yes.
I met a Nigerian friend some years ago, and we were talking, and she said Beke. I said Beke. That's the Creole word that we use for white people. So I was there listening, and a smile came over my face. No, Crispin, I don't know if you remember me, but I am from Picodo, Tetmon area.
Yes.
And you remember me?
Not quite, but I
Okay.
I think I know. And Picodo is a place I've been visiting a lot.
Okay, well, yes, I used to go to Wesley High School, and I know you years back when your first love was from going to Wesley High School.
You see, this lady has my file. Yes, that
Oh, my
unfortunate
God.
accident that happened when I was a teenager.
I know, it was so sad.
Yeah.
Anyway, I not too long ago came to understand that your mother, who was a Bellot, Hugh's daughter, right?
Yes.
She was related to my mother. My mother was a Bellot by her mother.
Small world.
I see. Uh-huh.
Yes. So 2016, when I went home, I went to visit your mother.
Uh-huh.
And I knew her because I was teaching at Highland too.
I see.
So I met Roy and he took me upstairs. But at that point, I still didn't know that she was related to me.
I see. Uh-huh.
You know, so I asked Mr. Lance's daughter, Cheryl.
Yes.
Then she, was telling me about the estate at Bordeaux and all of that. And I said, okay, it's a small world.
Yes.
It is. It
Yes.
is. Right. Well, it's
But
so good to hear from you.
yes, it's a pleasure listening to you. You know, you have so much information. I really admire you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks a lot, my
Yes,
dear.
yes,
Yes. Thank you
yes.
for calling.
Okay,
Continue
thanks
the
a lot,
good work.
Marcelina, and
You know
God, and
what?
God bless you.
Oh,
All right.
oh,
Okay,
Marcelina.
take
Is
care.
that Marcelina
Marcelina.
Angol?
Yes,
Yes, you see,
Marcelina.
Marcelina Ango.
Now I remember who it is.
Okay. All
Okay, my
right.
dear,
Have a
pleasant
good
night to
night.
you.
Yes.
All right, and God
Yes.
bless
Night.
you.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah, nice
Marcelina.
talking to you all.
Sure.
More,
All right.
more
Bye-bye.
calls coming in for Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. Good evening to you, Creole Heartbeat. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, bonsoir. What's up, Creole Heartbeat?
Yes, this is Sensei Dominica. I think
Okay, my friend, Sensei Dominica.
Crispin probably know me as.
Of course.
Oh, Lawrence.
Lawrence.
Oh, Lawrence, of course, Earl. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening. I used to be president of DADA. I know in
Yes.
Dominica, America.
Yes.
Live and Development, right?
Mhm.
Association in New York.
Yes.
Okay, well, Crispin, I see you have is that a book you wrote? Remembrance of the Slave Trade and its abolition?
Yes.
How can I get a copy of that book?
The which book, girl?
It's a remembrance of the slave trade and its abolition. I see it right there in the program.
Oh, okay. Well, it's actually a website. It's called the outreach program for the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery. If one Googles that, then it will take you to the exact site that will list all of the details about the history of this program, when it started back in 2007, the various resolutions that have been passed, and then the different activities that have been held over the years. So it's not a book, but there's a dedicated website, and it would even link you to, like, when they have the meeting of the General Assembly on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, for the 2026 commemoration. It will be broadcast live from the UN General Assembly, and people can watch that on UN webcast. UN TV would carry it. And there's a lot of material there. Like, for example, this morning I went to the site and I looked for the resolutions that we passed. The very first one, which was passed in 2006, to have the bicentenary, and then the resolutions to establish the International Day and the memorial. All of these things are there. And it's something that students really who want to learn about slave trade and the impact on the Caribbean should really look at.
Okay. Okay, Earl? Okay,
Well, yes, but I think you guys have a very good conversation. And
Yeah, man.
It covers the whole history of Dominica.
Yeah, man.
Children
Thanks a lot, man.
Dominica should be very educated about this history,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Uh-huh.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
sir.
you very much for calling.
That's
You're
Earl
very
Lawrence Sensei Dominique.
Dominic,
Yeah, very powerful individual in the U.S. Well, Crispin, you're talking about Exile One. More calls coming in, then. More calls coming in. Good evening
Yeah.
to you for Crispin Gregoire. Good evening.
Good night.
Good night to you. How are you?
Good night.
Good night, Mr. Crispin.
Yeah, thank you. Good night, sir. Thanks for calling.
What if you talk about Barbados integrating with Africa? I think they had National Africa Day in Barbados sometime last year,
Yeah.
and there were some African people who come down in Barbados,
Yep.
and I think the Barbados government giving them citizenship, something like that, or land, and where they come from, I can't remember the part of Africa. That part of Africa giving Barbados citizen asylum, just as Crispin saying there.
Yes.
And Wadix, I want you to continue that legacy, Wadix. Wadix, you're a great man, They should put a statue for you first, before you leave the earth. Man, you're laughing, this is no joking, brother. Crispin, the same Haitian guy you talk about it. Can you get somebody like these guys to build a statue of Chubby, Gordon, all those guys, and nobody's going to vandalize it, It will be secured night and day,
Yeah.
I'd really love to do that. At this in Grand Bay, Chubby, in Portsmouth, Gordon,
Yes,
Zikak,
Patrick.
and all over, man.
And-
Jeff Joe in Grand Bay, in
Yes,
St.
Patrick.
Joe, and so
We
Ali
have to
Bott that
celebrate
just died
men.
would be in Maho, this kind of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Crispin, do something for Hardy. Alex just talk about it. And Crispin, it's hurting, When I see the train leave on great men from the east, the environment is the architect. I don't want to call those guys names because they might just get angry. These guys that was on the move in the late 60s with Ruzi. I remember. You remember Marigot
Yes. Yeah.
by the gas station.
Yes. Yes.
I used to speak in that literally meeting, in that shop. Little boy, because I couldn't be, but I was listening and watching what was happening. Ruzi had a big American vehicle.
Yes.
And Afi used to have a little red truck. Afi still had a phone at those times. So I've age.
Yes.
But Crispin, what we can do for Ruzi as a school, as what it was saying, to the African continent, do the boys for Ruzi can do something like a school, African university on the estate?
Yeah, I think again the issue for us as I said, each of the Caribbean countries must select a couple African countries to partner with.
But look at the All Saints School.
Yes, that is Nigerian, huh?
Yes. So we can take an example from there.
Yeah.
But Mr. Greg, I don't want to disturb the program because I hear Mr. Gordon's talk about the musician to get the copyrights by paying the taxes. And I think people like Mr. Gordon should do like Jimmy Cliff, build a school for the young people. Don't worry about the politician. Do like Crispin just talk about you open up to Nigeria. Look at Dr. Fadipe. The same thing Crispin was just saying there. Since from the 80s, they bring the Nigerian to help us. And look at Dr. Fadipe.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So I think people like Mr. Gordon, because if you look at Jimmy Cliff, before he died, he buy a big property for the young Jamaican people with recording studio, instrument, school. And that is what he gives to Jamaica. So I think people like Gordon, I respect them, man. Don't worry about the system because all you contribute. Have a good night.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you very much, caller. But just for correction, I know for sure Gordon attempted to do a recording studio and CD plant in Castle Comfort. More calls coming in for Crispin. Gregoire, good evening. Good evening, Creole Heartbeat.
Yeah, good evening, Ambassador Charles and Ambassador Gregoire.
Good evening to you, sir.
Very, very interesting program.
Thank you very much.
I must commend both of you for all that information, especially Ambassador Gregoire.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're most welcome, most welcome. Yes. From my experience, spiritual and in tourism, I find certain things you've said to be very, very interesting. You mentioned that book aspect of Dominican history. I looked it up online. And I noticed there's a copy available somewhere in the United States in ABE Books.
Oh, ABE Books, yes.
In that area, there's a copy available in that area. But I'm also exploring other possibilities of trying to get a copy myself because I'd like to know more about the history of Dominica.
Yeah, if you can have somebody check with the print tree in Dominica in Roseau, still have copies. Then you might be able to get a copy at a relatively good price.
I'm already on that.
Okay. Yes.
I'm exploring that possibility.
Yeah, and it's so Professor Joseph Borromi, his book, his what he wrote on Spain and Dominica, and then he He also wrote a piece on how Crown Colony government came to Dominica. Very important books. And when I read, what's important when you're reading these people is to read the footnotes. The footnotes has a lot of detail when historians write. So I want the students to really begin to focus. And really what we need, you see, until such time when our students learn Caribbean history in school, but they don't learn Dominica history. And that's a gap that we need to fill. So, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, caller.
Yeah, and we have another point.
Okay, no problem. Go right ahead.
Before you do.
Go right ahead.
Well, that, of course, the history of Dominica and tourism industry is very important.
Yes.
So I think we need to sharpen our skills with that information so we can share for visitors to let them know more about Dominica.
Yes.
Also, you mentioned something that is very interesting regarding Africa, in particular Nigeria. I visited Nigeria several years ago. That state called Akwa Ibom.
Yes.
That's on the East Coast.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And when I visited Akwa Ibom, my wife and I, our experience there reminded me of the village of Laplin, where I'd lived for 2 years, where we lived for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
Talk about the Tonto.
Yes.
Yep.
That, of course, when we came in that day, that was the official meal.
Wow.
They greeted us with, and we had to eat it with our hands.
Yeah. Yes.
And it reminded me of Tonto because I had an experience in Laplin eating Tonto from breadfruit.
Yeah.
But this time it was Tonto from yams.
From yams, yes.
And that's the place I'd seen the biggest yams in my life. And most yams, we talk about Dominican yams, Nigeria have countless yams and not just little yams, huge yams.
Yes.
And it just reminded me of La Plaine, that part of Nigeria.
I see, okay. Well, I should tell you that there are people of Akwa Ibom ancestry in Dominica.
Is that right?
Yeah, that tribe is called, the tribe name escapes me right now, but that's the largest tribe in Akwa Ibom state. And Akwa Ibom almost borders with Cameroon, that part of Nigeria, on the on the Bakassi Peninsula. And I used to go to Akwa Ibom because I funded a women's group in Akwa Ibom, and I used to go there twice a year.
That's nice.
I also worked I traveled quite a bit. Nigeria is huge. I traveled half the country in the 6 years that I lived there. And it's a fascinating country. The reason I mentioned them as a possible partner for us is because of English.
Yeah.
And also that we have Nigerian ancestry, especially the Grambe people. And then there are a lot of traditions to learn. I mean, Dominicans are very afraid of voodoo and obia. Same thing as the Nigerians. It's real there. When I first went to Nigeria, everybody is afraid of juju, and I told them I'm not afraid of juju. I come from a place where
there's lots of that.
Yeah, and you ever heard of $5 fighting in the middle of the street in Granby?
I know.
These are some of the things they say about Granby. But anyway, there's a lot of things that we can do with them. Like, for example, I'd like to see we start sending students on scholarships to African universities, and the continent is huge. I mean, South Africa has some really very good universities. Kenya has good universities as well. Nigeria has, every state has a state university. They have 36 states. So education is one. But I also want to mention the Francophone, because Dominica is both a Francophone country and an Anglophone country. Right. So we can link up. I mean, you're talking about Gordon's music. And I laugh because when I used to go to the discos in Ghana in the 1990s, is Zouk music they were playing. And Kadas, right?
Yeah.
So music is already there. They already know our music. They just don't know that it's the place called Dominica. They still confuse us with Dominican Republic. But I'll tell you that the imprint of Dominica on the African continent is there. You go to Reunion, you go to Mauritius, that music is there, our music is there. You go to Senegal, they know about Dominica music, they know about Zouk, so.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. Okay, more calls coming in for Crispin Gregoire. Good evening, Creole Heartbeat. Bonsoir. Good evening. Bonsoir. Est-ce que vous là? Hello, good evening. Okay, we seem to have lost this call. But I really want us to talk about the cultural aspect of it. Because this one is very dear to me.
Yes.
In terms of cultural exchange. We already see, we know of their music being very prevalent here. We have brought several of the bands to our festival. And they also have a huge cultural industry. Okay, let's see if we can take in this call now. Good evening to you for Crispin Gregoire, Creole Heartbeat.
Yes, Ambassador. I got cut off a while ago.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought you were finished.
I got you. Ambassador Gregoire was talking about universities.
Yes.
In Nigeria, and that was what our main mission going to Akwa Ibom.
Oh, okay.
On a fact-finding mission from a church point of view.
I see.
And there are several universities in that area. And the particular university we went to was Obong University.
Yes.
That's the capital. Obong is a village, so to speak, in Akwa Ibom. And we went from Uyu, the capital, drove to Obong, that village.
Yes.
And just fascinating. You have different levels of education.
Wow.
You're talking about people who studied in the United States, graduated in the United States, came back and established schools in that area.
Wow.
At the university level.
Right.
Yes.
And we had the opportunity to see some of that in action. People came from Cameroon. The activity we went to, they came from Cameroon and different parts of Nigeria in their hundreds.
Wow.
It was just amazing to see, people on the level of education, and they emphasize education a lot in Nigeria.
They do.
And I believe definitely, I wish our host could visit Dominica. I tried to get him to come to Dominica, but he is advanced in age right now. I'm not sure he and his wife can make it, but I would really wish for them to come to Dominica. But when I explained to them what Dominica is like, they told me Dominica is a paradise.
Yes.
In comparison to development that was, we were advanced as far as certain development to them, as far as our infrastructure is concerned, we were advanced.
Right.
But educationally, they were, probably they were above us as far as education is concerned. But I know at that time they were building an international airport in that particular state. I suppose Ambassador Gregoire, you might know, that airport is functional right now, and probably it's much easier to get to Akwa Ibom right now than it was before.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's been built. And Nigeria, I have not been to Nigeria since 2003, so it's a long time. But there's phenomenal development that's gone on that in that country. I'm fascinated by the Nigerian preference for excellence. Nigeria is a place that is amazing. I mean, it first of all, it has few white people. There are not that many whites there. Secondly, they have a large cadre of trained people. I mean, scientists of all types, and everybody wants to achieve once they see education as critical to changing their status. And, so I think there are opportunities for countries to partner, especially. I mean, we are English speaking, but we also speak Creole, which links us to the Francophone. And in West Africa, you have a lot of Francophone countries. And our music is one thing that is going to thing. And then as we move into the whole arena of film and music and videography and art and African art, the appreciation of African art, which is, I think there are a lot of things that we can do jointly with African countries, and we need to embrace that.
Yes. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the last time when we were there was in 2008.
I see.
Okay.
That was in 2008.
Mm. I in recent times I've been to the African continent. Last year I was in Algeria and Western Sahara. I've been there in recent times. I've been to, let's see, I've been to Egypt. I've been to Egypt a few times, and when I was working in Egypt and I work in South Africa, to fly from Egypt to South Africa is 10 hours. That's how big the continent is,
Yes.
Okay, caller, very insightful. Just want to thank you so very much.
You're most welcome. All the best.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And thank you very much, caller. I mean, very insightful from our caller.
Yes.
I wanted to also touch on the cultural aspect of our, because this is very critical for us.
Yes.
Cultural movement, cultural integration, and that offer by the Ghana government, I think it is a very lucrative. I'm not sure how we can take advantage of this one. Where it's a direct offer where Ghana is offering the diaspora an opportunity to, and this is, to me, I see it further than just the passport.
Yes, right.
I seen much more than Ghana was once called the
Gold Coast.
The Gold Coast, right?
And still produce a lot of gold.
And still produce a lot of gold.
Yeah.
So and they are reaching out.
Yeah.
They are not reaching out. I was kind of amazed when I saw they actually wanted to give the diaspora passports. And they say, wow, the Caribbean seem to be really getting closer to the African continent.
Right.
But culturally,
right.
Crispin, culturally, there's so much to offer.
Yes, there is. What I have noticed is that there's been a close affinity between Ghana and the Jamaicans, because many of the Jamaicans are of Ghanaian ancestry, especially the Maroons. The Maroons of Jamaica are largely Ghanaians. But one of the things that tells me about how close the Jamaicans are to the Ghanaian cultural tradition, I just look at their drums. And the Jamaicans have a set of drums that they play that we don't play here. They have these tall drums. These are direct from Ghana. Oh. And so they have kept up that tradition. Now, the other thing is that, the Rasta movement here has always had that reverence for going back to Africa.
Just for a while, I think we have another caller there for Crispin, Gregoire, and the Creole Heartbeat. But good evening to you.
Hello, this is Ophelia. I wanted to say hi.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, go right ahead with your question or comment to Ambassador Gregoire.
Okay, I want to say good evening both to Wadix and to Ambassador Gregoire.
Oh, I love this voice, man. La Grandam de la Chanson. Yes, bonsoir.
Bonsoir, La Grandam.
Yeah, recently I was in Burkina Faso.
Ah, oui.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I
bonsoir,
really
madame.
To tell him so. Yeah. So far and wide. But I am delighted about the expanse that he expresses, because they used to make us think that Africa was so small, but it isn't. It is vast.
Yes.
And I have to say it was only my first time in Africa, although I went in my dreams, and has always been one of my parties. And I was really delighted to see that they knew our music, not just Gordon's, but Ophelia's and the other Calypso artists are also well known.
Yes.
And I'm hearing that there are some of the modern ones who are going to go. I think I forget his name now.
Trilogy?
Yes, trilogy is supposed to go sometime soon, and there are others who
Yes.
will be going. And sometimes we don't realize what we have and how people like what we have.
Yes.
So when Crispin, and I hope you don't mind me calling you Crispin.
Not at all. Not at all. That's my name.
Yes, and when you speak about the camaraderie and the partnerships that we can develop, I know we're not coming empty-handed, and we can share what we have in the same way that we can receive what they have. And in Burkina Faso, there's a facet that is very interesting, and that is their fabric. They weave their own
Cloth,
cotton
right? Yes.
and make cloth, yes, and they put designs into that. And when you put on one of those outfits, you feel, well, I felt like a queen when that happened to me, and that is something that belongs to us.
Yes.
When I went over there, I felt as if I was going back home.
Yes.
I saw the love for color. I saw the respect for the senior citizens, so to speak, the elders. They called Mac and me Mommy and Papi.
Yes.
And there was reverence. They allowed us to pass in front of everybody else. And they carried our bags. There was, respect and honor. All the things that we have taken from them. And we have to know where that came from.
Yes.
And the love for color. I mean, they love color. And we are like that.
Yes.
So when Wadik is talking culture,
Yes.
I know he's talking about all of those things, and we better embrace that because it is coming our way.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, Ophelia, I think I see many opportunities for us in the cultural realm to connect. One of them is that we should now be part of the African Festival of Arts and Culture.
I agree.
And that was, that was started in 1976, the first one. I remember back then, I was teaching at the Granby School, and the government of Nigeria had planned to send charter flights to the Caribbean to take people to Nigeria for the first Festival of Arts and Culture. And then what stopped it was a military coup. And the then leader of Nigeria was overthrown. And it threw the whole thing. General Gowon was overthrown, and the whole thing was scuttled. And so I remember telling my father I was saving money for me to go on to Nigeria, and he said, "Good luck."
Yes, I know.
But
and and that is in keeping, Crispin, with the kind of portrayal they want to make of Africa. I mean, when I told people I saw big cars and I saw hotels, like stories high, I had to put my head up to look at them.
Yes.
And things like that. Our people really need to see more so that we appreciate who and what Africa is, so that we ourselves can feel the psyche that Wadik likes to talk about, and all of the good things that we have inherited and we have come here.
Yes.
With.
And Ophelia, one of the things they're thinking of us, because one of the things that is being discussed on the continent right now is that should the Caribbean become uninhabitable or uninhabitable because of climate change, that the continent might be prepared to absorb some of that Caribbean population. They're talking about that. So, so that is one of the things that will come. The second thing is that the dawn of this century that has unfolded on us, this 21st century, is the African century.
It is.
And Africa is going to blossom in this century. And
it's already doing that.
and they will link with the Caribbean. Sometimes I say to African diplomats that maybe it should be, we talk about Latin America and the Caribbean, but we are treated not as an equal in that Latin America and the Caribbean.
Yes.
I see a future where it's Africa and the Caribbean.
Oh, yes. I can see it too.
And that is something that we will be in the next 25 years, that will bring us to the half of the century, 2050. I mean, 2050.
Yes.
I'll not be around, but
Who says so?
but I will say that Africa and the Caribbean will advance in terms
Yes.
of greater cooperation, and there's a lot the continent can share with us. I mean, when I look at every single country in Africa has resources that no other country has.
Yes.
You take a country like Niger, for example, which has uranium, and you need uranium to make nuclear weapons, but you also need uranium to produce electricity from nuclear energy. France used to benefit from that uranium from Niger at a cut rate price. They were not paying the full price, subsidized price. Well, the military regime there now said, look, you're going to have to pay us. If you want my uranium for your electricity in France, you're going to have to pay us what it's worth. So I think there are many possibilities, even for tourism, for example. There are a lot of rich Africans now. I mean, across the continent have a lot of rich people.
Yes.
Who we can lure to, if an international airport here, we can build a relationship, we can market directly. And Wadix, one of the things I think we've not done well with our tourism is that we should be marketing far more in France and let France be our gateway to the continent of Western Europe. Because UK used to be that for us, but after Brexit, UK has been reduced to a small country. So we need to ally with France. We are between two French islands. That gives us, Rosie Douglas had this idea of a special relationship with Europe. Let us do that. We are in that location. We are next door to France, and we need to think about that. And that next door to France connects us directly with the Francophone Africa, where our music is big. And and then, you know, Ophelia, I went to Turkey one time, and I was amazed that St. Kitts rum is selling in Turkey. And why is Dominica rum not selling? We have more brands of rum than St. Kitts. So what I'm saying is that places like South Africa would be markets for some of the things we produce. And then water, when we develop a water industry, Africa will buy our water because there are countries that are water insecure in Africa.
Yes, true.
Lagwadam, merci un pile.
Yes, merci un pile. I was bound to talk.
Thank you very much.
And two solid ambassadors like that.
Thank you very much, my dear. And may God continue to richly bless you.
Okay, fine.
And as we wind down, Ambassador Gregoire, will you be playing any role in the celebration of the day on Wednesday?
Yes, on Wednesday, I will go to my alma mater, St. Mary's Academy.
That's mine also.
Yes, that's right, and I will be speaking.
That's our producer's alma mater also.
Okay. So I'll be speaking to the fifth formers. On Wednesday, and I know that that same evening on TDN Radio they're going to do a similar interview with me on this International Day. If I was in New York, I would be attending the meeting at the UN and the Special General Assembly meeting. But you know, Wadix, I say to myself, I am happy that I could place Dominica in a position where it mattered in the world that we. No matter, I come from a small village. It takes a village to raise a child, and then to reach the pinnacles of power in the global system, which the UN is, and then to being able to pull this one off. And then there's another legacy I left there I should mention, which is I am the organizer of the first World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. And that's a whole other realm. We have to do a program on that because of our indigenous people here. But then Wadix, to have pulled that one off, I thought I got many gray hairs from doing that work, but these are accomplishments for Dominica. It's not for Crispin Gregoire per se. I'm the actor, yes, but had Dominica not sent me to the UN, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish those things.
Ambassador Gregoire, in 60 seconds, I want you to appeal to our consciousness to this special day.
Yes.
And to recognize it on Wednesday in whatever way we can, whether it's a speech through whoever is responsible for the UN presently,
Yes.
or the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Dominica,
Right.
or the ambassador in, or President
At the
Ambassador,
UN. At the UN, yeah.
have some level of, recognition
Yeah.
to remember that day. So I'm going to give you, let's say 60 seconds, 90 seconds to appeal to us and our consciousness about this special day.
Yeah. Well, I think that Dominica going forward should remember that day. I hope this Wednesday that all the radio stations will say today is the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Let that awareness percolate into in our mindset, especially our young people. And then when I speak to the students at St. Mary's Academy, I'll be bringing them to looking at the history that they're writing for their CXCs on Caribbean history, because that, this is a aspect of Caribbean history that is not well known. Now, one of the things that I did at the UN when we had the first commemoration in 2007 was to bring Professor Rex Nettleford from Jamaica, from the UWI, to be the keynote speaker. And that's a feature of the UN meeting, so that there's a keynote speaker who is not a UN diplomat. It's somebody from academia or somebody who's an activist in public affairs, and that they speak. I remember last year, I can't remember who was the person.
Do you work with or how close are you to the Dominica Reparations Committee?
Not that close, but I'd like to get close with them because that issue is topical. It's resonating, and we'll go through hoops. But what I like about the Dominica approach on the reparations is that they have included the Kalinago.
Yeah.
So it's not just the people of African descent, but also the Kalinago people.
I think there should be a closer relationship between you and the Dominica Reparations Committee, in particular Dr. Damian Dublin, who is passionate about
yes.
You're on the same wavelength.
Because, absolutely.
And I believe possibly next year look at having this day at a more grander scale and invite possibly the same Rex Nettleford or one of the...
Well, he's deceased now.
Oh, he's deceased?
Yes.
What is the other guy? There's another prominent university lecturer, professor, who deals with reparations, slavery. Anyway, we can brainstorm this.
Yes.
But I believe there should be a stronger tie between
I think
you and collaborating with the reparations committee.
Yes, absolutely.
And getting to a level where we can celebrate who we are. It's just a matter of celebrating who we are as a people.
Right. I just saw earlier tonight something very interesting in the news, and that is that the president of Ghana will be going to the UN to speak on reparatory justice and speak about how the slave trade continues to this day to affect Ghana. It'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say. But this issue of the people of African descent who were brought to the Americas is of great interest on a larger scale to a lot of young people in Africa. And the continent is huge. So we're talking about the one continent in the world that has all these young people.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're getting our final call from our producer for Ambassador Crispin Gregoire. Good evening to you.
Yes, good evening. I'm listening. Good program. I'm a student of history, African history, African American history, and social Caribbean history. And it's a very good program tonight, but I find we have the solution to our problems, but we keep dividing ourselves. Mr. Gregoire, you should have contacted W a long time ago. This is part of the reparation committee. What is the problem? I mean, right now you bring it up, but you should be in it a long time ago. Anyway, thank you.
Yes. Well,
okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Well, I will try to connect with them.
It's simple. It's simple. Never too late. And I figure the more education, I believe one of our biggest deficiencies here is to get more individuals to disseminate the information and to get the school system to adopt that level of knowledge to the students. It must go through the Ministry of Education.
Right.
That the necessary literature is there, the information is out there. It's just to get it to the students, to get them, more in sync with their history, to know where they came from, to understand where we are, to know where we need to go. But Ambassador Gregoire, I would really like to thank you for taking some time to be with us this evening. I think it was another spellbound historical aspect to, first of all, the UNICEF Granby scenario where we wanted to get some clarity as to what really took place, the effects of it, and how Granby people and why Granby, our Granbarians should be so proud of UNICEF and the work and he and others did, to where we are going to be celebrating this very important Remembrance Day, because we all know the travesty, the biggest travesty of humanity was that slavery still suffer from the scars, whether we want to accept it or not. And it was really a privilege. I want to thank the program director for allowing us 2.5 hours. Also, the manager of DBS Radio.
Yes.
Our producer, Dean Thomas.
I see.
Dean of Instructions. He took some time off to be with us. And all our viewers and listeners, those looking at viewing at home, we really want to thank you for tuning up. We hope that you were edified. And we want to encourage you to continue to seek the information, to get acquainted to where you come from. I mean, there's so much to learn now. Gone are the days when we thought that all the malnutrition people from Africa, and they would show us all kind of,
These are the images.
From Africa, like Africa is the worst place. We now know better.
Yeah.
And very importantly, we are on track to this international airport. And like Honorable Gregoire said, it's just going to be about 9 hours away from the African continent. I mean, this is exciting news and possibly the right time for us to start to really forge relationships, this in tourism, in culture, trade, and start to get things in process. So by the time we reach to that juncture, we're already a few steps ahead. So thank you again, Honorable Ambassador Gregoire.
Yes, it was really a great honor, Ambassador Wadix, to be here and then to talk to the Dominican people. Of course, the DBS, I don't always get on to DBS, but I'm very thankful this evening to both the manager of this
and the program
director. Thank you very much, and the engineer who oversaw the program tonight. I want to thank you too, and I hope that it's been a learning experience. Very good questions coming from the people who are participating, and thank you again, Honorable Ambassador Wadix, and then Wadix. I want to say that in the arena of culture, you are sort of like one of the deans of the Dominican culture landscape. I want to work with you because I can see opportunities how we can connect with groups in Africa. I've worked in about 18 African countries and traveled quite a bit on the continent. I don't know Central Africa that well, but I've traveled in the north, in the east, and in the west, and it's a phenomenal continent. And the closer we get as Caribbean people to the continent, the better the future for our countries.
My biggest dream is to touch the African continent.
You will. Let us see to that. And you should do like me. You know what, Alex? I have never paid once to go to Africa.
Okay.
Somebody else always paid my ticket.
So, make that dream come true for me.
We'll make it happen.
Thank you very much for that special Creole Heartbeat program. And continue to listen to your nation station. We won't be in with our normal Wednesday program, but hopefully we should be back on the following week. That's Holy Week. By the way, enjoy the rest of the week, Dominica. May God bless you, and may God bless the greatest country, the face of the earth, Dominica. Bonsoir tout le monde.
Great.